Thank you so much for joining the show. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll be notified every time I upload new content. Now back to the discussion. Well, welcome to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King, and this is Extra 106.3, and this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And before I announce my table topic for this week, I want to say thank you to Eric and the whole Class E community. I went on his podcast recently, and I will be sharing clips from that podcast probably next week's episode. However, I went on his podcast to discuss all the election stuff that's going on, the state election board stuff. He's been following it. I recommend, if you care about elections, if you care about what is happening in our, particularly in Fulton County and here in Georgia, I would highly recommend following his podcast. I am dropping the link to his show in the description box of this episode. But please check it out. As well as at the end of this episode, I will also put up a little video that will make it easy for you to go straight to that interview that I did with him. But shout out to him because he encouraged a lot of his subscribers to come and support my page. And as a result of that, we have hit our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Woo, 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 woo. We did it. So YouTube is rocking and rolling and moving on. And I'm just so excited. And I'm so grateful. And the spirit of gratitude and just being grateful informs our topic for today, because we're going to talk about Iran. I think it's time that we talk about it. If you've been watching the news this past week, you know that the world has definitely shifted underneath our feet. We are certainly at a very interesting point. A historical moment has taken place. We aren't just talking about tensions anymore. We're talking about actual attacks. So let's start by looking at the latest report from this morning. And it's clear to see that the smoke is still clearing over there in Iran from what historians will call this as the most significant escalation in the Middle East since 1979, following the massive U.S. and Israeli joint strikes that took place on February 28th, strikes that pretty much decapitated the regime's leadership and reportedly took out the supreme leader, Khamenei, followed by, obviously, retaliation from Iran, which we're now seeing, and which is why there's so many people that are on lockdown in Israel as well as in Dubai and the UAE. But within the past few days, we've seen hundreds of ballistic missiles fired not just at Israel, but at our allies in the UAE as well as in Qatar or Qatar, however you want to pronounce it. But what does this tell us? It tells us that we have them on their heels, that they're desperate, that Iran is cornered and they're feeling cornered. And it means that they will become increasingly more dangerous. But in order to understand that, you have to know what's going on. But before we talk about the missiles, we have to talk about why this is happening. We have to talk about the people inside of Iran. Because while the headlines are about warheads and drone strikes, the real story is the horror of living under the boot of this dictatorship. Just 2 months ago in January, we saw what might have been the deadliest crackdown in Iranian history. When protests erupted, starvation started, desperate people started demanding basic dignity, and the regime responded with bullets. We're talking about reports of thousands of people being shot dead in the streets. Threats of massive hangings in the public, upwards to 800 people. And thank goodness President Trump sent a clear message that if you hang those innocent people, that he will send a missile to land exactly where they stand at that time. Unfortunately, the internet has hidden some of the slaughter, the torture chambers that are filling up with anyone who dares to whisper the word freedom. That is the regime that we are dealing with. A regime that treats its own citizens as enemy combatants. But if you want to understand the true nature of the enemy that we are facing, you don't look at the launch pad. You look at the street corner of Tehran. You look at the life of Iranian women. one that I want to highlight a little bit, particularly as a woman. I want you to strip away your American reality for just a few minutes. Forget your rights, forget your freedoms, forget your voice, and imagine waking up in Iran. Your war doesn't start when you hear the sirens go off. If you are Iranian, your war starts the moment you step out of your front door. Actually, it started before that. It started in the mirror, particularly if you are a woman. Because for Iranian women and girls, every morning before they can leave the house to go to work or to go to school or to buy bread, they have to put on their uniform of submission. Not by choice, but by law. They check the mirror to see if there's a strand of hair showing. Or is your coat too short? Or is your makeup too bright? In the West, as a woman, I look into the mirror to see if I look good. But for Iranian women, they are checking to see if they're safe. Are they going to be safe the moment they step outside their home from their own government? Because if they get it wrong, according to their laws, according to their lack of freedom, you aren't just facing a fashion faux pas. You're facing a white van, which leads to either being beaten or being killed. We've all heard of the morality police. It sounds almost bureaucratic, but it isn't. Let's call them what they are. They're state-sponsored kidnappers. They patrol the streets looking for women to harass, to beat, and to shove into vans. Imagine walking down the street and your heart is racing every time you see a green stripe on a police car. You lower your head, you lower your eyes, you shrink. You try to become invisible because in the eyes of the Islamic Republic, your visibility is a crime. A woman's beauty is a crime. Your voice is a crime. And it's not just the clothes, it's the law itself. If you are a woman in Iran, in the eyes of the court, you are worth half of a man. That's not a figure of speech. That is a penal code. Your testimony in court is worth half. Your inheritance is worth half. If you want to travel, if you want to leave the country to see the world, you have to get the permission of your husband. You are a prisoner to the men in your lives by state decree. If your husband wants a divorce, fine, he can do whatever he wants. But if you wanted a divorce because your husband's beating on you, because he's forcing you into a false sense of submission, well, good luck. Because remember, you are only half of the man. But here's the part that shakes me to the core. Here's the part that everyone in the West needs to hear. Despite 40 years of this, despite the beatings, the acid attacks, the prison sentences, the blinding of protesters with bird shots, the women of Iran are not broken. Many of them are openly protesting by not covering their hair, by protesting in the street alongside their brothers and freedom. The people of Iran are ready to fight back. And it's important that they have the support of the United States. Now, keeping that in mind, how does the U.S. view Iran today? Well, the gloves are off. For the first time and finally, the Trump administration has made it very clear that the era of managing the chaos is over. The United States view is now simple. The Islamic Republic, in its current form, is incompatible with world peace and a direct threat to our core national security. So we aren't just looking at a rival anymore. We are looking at a hostage taker that has finally run out of leverage. But unfortunately, if you listen to all the libtards or the liberals, whatever you want to call them, you would think that Iran wasn't that bad, that it's not that hard over there, that the people that are protesting are protesting for basic stuff, but it's okay. They're kind of okay. That we Americans are the problem for helping those people. That we are entering us into a war, although it was the Israeli strike that killed their leader.
Out of our country. I mean, I grew up in a dictatorship. And I don't even remember ever witnessing anything like that. To have a democracy, a beacon of hope for the world to now be turned into one of the worst countries where the military are in our streets without any regard for people's constitutional rights, while our president is spending millions of dollars propping himself up like a failed dictator with a military parade.
We heard from New York City's Mayor Zoran Mamdani. I want to be able to bring you his statement if we can. He says today's military strikes on Iran carried out by the United States and Israel mark a catastrophic escalation in an illegal war of aggression. A big statement there from the New York City Mayor, going on to say bombing cities, killing civilians, opening a new theatre of war. Americans do not want this. They do not want another war in pursuit of regime change. Democratic Governor of California, Gavin Newsom, he also weighed in, describing it as an illegal, dangerous war that will risk the lives of our American service members and our friends without justification to the American people.
So because I want my listeners to be excellent kitchen table debaters, I don't want you to debate the issues with an emotional sense. I want you to know what you are talking about. And I want you to come to conclusions that can be properly defended. So after the break, we're going to discuss how we got here. And you're going to hear a perspective on the recent attacks from a former CIA agent, and one who has a really, really cool podcast, by the way. So you don't want to miss the next segment. We're just getting started. You're listening to The Janelle King Show right here on Extra 106.3. Don't leave the table.
Hello, everyone. My name is Suzanne Guy, and this is the Church's Moment. There is an incredible opportunity to start a distinct pro-life ministry at your church. We started one at our church about 5 years ago, and the fruit has been tangibly beautiful. We do monthly meetings that educate and equip the body of believers on sanctity of human life issues from womb to tomb by bringing in and featuring different pro-life leaders from all over Georgia, as well as featuring different ministries like post-abortion healing ministries or foster care ministries. There are so many great community partners out there. And then the second part of this pro-life ministry is having a care team. This is an opportunity to show moms in crisis, moms in unplanned, unwanted, or crisis pregnancies that the church is the place to run to, that the church is a safe haven and a place to go for tangible help, real hope, true compassion, friendship, and discipleship. And yes, an opportunity to share the gospel in both word and deed. Brothers and sisters in Christ, will you consider starting a distinct pro-life ministry at your church? It's so easy. Please contact me today to find out how simple this is. You can contact me at my email, proverbs31:8@att.net. This is the Church's Moment.
Welcome back. Welcome back to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King, and this is Extra 106.3, and this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. In today's table topic, Iran. If you've been watching the news, then you know that the world has absolutely shifted, and some will say that this is the most significant escalation that we've seen in the Middle East since 1979. Following these joint U.S.-Israeli attacks that decapitated the regime leadership and also pushed them into the corner, and now we see Iran is desperate and lashing out at our allies. But the real story isn't about the missiles, it's about the people that they've been crushing for decades. We are witnessing a regime that massacred thousands of protesters in January and legally treats women as half a citizen, forcing them into submission under the threat of state-sponsored kidnappers. Yet while President Trump's administration has finally taken the gloves off, the liberals are somehow blaming us for the conflict. But I want you to be an excellent kitchen table debater. I want you to be armed with facts rather than emotion. So this segment that you're listening to right now is going to be dedicated to the facts and education. We are examining the why. Because let me tell you, as Americans, we have been sold a dream of isolationism, and we disguise it under the cloak of the term American first. But the truth is, running and hiding in our own country from the world does not stop bad actors from wanting to take over our country. And we have a choice to make. Either we bring the fight to them or we wait until they bring it to us. And don't tell me that's not the Christian thing to do, because I will tell you that you're clearly not reading your Bible. Because there are direct commands to the children of Israel to go and possess the land. Do you know what that means? When they said to go and occupy the land, that means they had to fight with those who currently occupied it to take over the land. And that was a commandment by God. So it's not enough to sit in your cute apartment with your microwave popcorn and your glass of wine while making all these predictions based off of TikTok reels. It is imperative on all of us to fully understand what is going on. So let's start by understanding how we got to this point. Because the more I listen to young people, and some old, I hear them saying things like, we're manufacturing wars. What we've been taught about our history has been altered. This is all about money. Now, before you go there, if you can't answer the questions who, what, and why this is happening, it is safe to say that you're probably incorrect. So how did we get here? How did we end up with carrier strike groups in the Gulf and missiles flying over the desert? Well, we need to be honest about our history. It didn't start this week. It didn't start in October. This is a cancer that has been growing since 1979. The media likes to make it complicated. They use words like geopolitical nuisance. But the story of the U.S. and Iran relationship is actually very simple. It's a story of friendship and betrayal. And a war that they started and we refused to fight for a very long time until now. So let's wind back the clock to the 1970s. Believe it or not, there was a time when Tehran looked a lot like Los Angeles. In the 70s, Iran was one of our strongest allies in the Middle East. They bought our jets. They sold us oil. An American tourist was able to walk the streets of Tehran safely. It wasn't a perfect democracy, but it was stable. Then came 1979, and that was the rise of the Islamic Revolution. Radical Islamists hijacked the country. They didn't just overthrow their king, they overthrew the entire concept of the modern world, turning their democracy into a theocracy. And that was their very first act as a new government. Did they sign a treaty? No. They stormed the United States Embassy. They took 52 American hostages. They held them for 444 days. That was the declaration of war. That is when this war between us and Iran started. That was the moment the death to America chants began. And frankly, that was the moment that we should have ended it all. But we didn't. We hesitated because all of our wine glass, popcorn eating people felt like, no, it's okay. So then we fast forward to 1983. The regime realizes that they can't fight us head on. They don't have the military capability. So they start using proxies. These are terrorist groups that are funded and trained. They orchestrated the bombing of the Marine barracks in Beirut. They killed 241 American servicemen in their sleep. Again, Iran's fingerprints were all over it. Again, we treated it like a crime scene instead of a battlefield. So now let's move into the 2000s. Insert 9/11 and then the Iraq War. While our boys were over there fighting, Iran wasn't staying neutral. They were flooding Iraq with EFPs, which are explosively formed penetrators. They were sophisticated roadside bombs designed to specifically rip through American armor. Hundreds, maybe thousands of Gold Star families in America today are without fathers, without their sons, because of Iranian generals like Soleimani. Then came the Obama years, the nuclear deal, the diplomatic option that everybody's calling for. The idea was, if we give them their frozen assets back, they'll stop building a bomb. So we flew them pallets of cash, literal cash, to the world's leading state sponsor of terror. And what came from it? Did they build schools? Did they fix their economy? Of course not. Instead, they took our money, thanks to Obama, and they funded Hamas. They funded Hezbollah. They built missiles that they're now landing in the UAE and Dubai right now. And finally, in comes 2020 and the Trump administration. This is where we begin to see a dynamic shift. We took out Soleimani. We said enough. And for the first time in decades, the regime realized that killing Americans had a price tag. No more games, no more tick for tack, no more playing. For over 40 years, the relationship between the United States and Iran had been defined by one thing, and that's Iranian aggression and American hesitation. From the hostage crisis to the barracks bombing in Beirut, to the IEDs that killed our soldiers in Iraq, to the regime that has been at war with us for decades, we just refuse to admit it. We do the bare minimum to push them back, to deter. We've tried appeasement. We've tried nuclear deals. We've sent pallets of cash in the dead of night, thanks to Obama, hoping that if we fed the monster wouldn't eat us. Well, it didn't work. It didn't work. They took that money and they built the very missiles that they're firing at our allies today. They took that legitimacy that we now gave them and they used it to crush their own people and make it even harder. And this brings me to something that is truly disturbing. As we watch this tyranny crumble, and as we watch the U.S. and Israel finally stand up to the bully, I'm looking at the reaction here at home. Look at the reaction from the far left. Look at the reaction for our evangelical and our Christian community. Instead of cheering us on for initiating the liberation of the Iranian people, instead of supporting the removal of a theocratic dictatorship that hangs people from cranes, we're hearing cries for more restraint, more hesitation. We hear anti-American slogans. We hear people painting the U.S. as the aggressor, and Christians who are calling for us to shut the door to the world and to go hide within our country, only thinking of ourselves. It is disturbing. It is a moral reversal. Where was this outrage when the regime was blinding teenage girls for showing their hair? Where was this outrage during the January massacres? Where were the Believe All Women protesters or the LGBTQ people who were protesting this regime for throwing gay people off of buildings? When you see people marching in support of a regime that hates everything the West stands for, our freedom of speech, our women's rights, our religious tolerance, you have to ask yourself, whose side are you on? They claim to be anti-war, but by opposing the destruction of this terrorist, they are effectively voting for the continuation of a regime's war against its own people. Guys, we are fighting a theocracy. You have to understand what that means. We are fighting an organized adversary who hates you simply because you are a Christian more so than an American. They will not stop because they do not believe that Jews and Christians should exist. If they get access to missiles that can reach our country, you better believe they're sending them. And as a Christian, as a believer, you have to know that we are living in the times of wars and wars and rumors of wars. You have to understand that you cannot stop the book of Revelations from happening. You cannot love these people into submission because you are dealing with those who have a reprobate mind. We are fighting a spiritual warfare, but we are most certainly fighting a physical one also. But you don't have to take my word for it. Let's hear from Mike Baker, a former CIA agent who has spent a lot of time in the Middle East, who has a dynamic podcast called The Presidential Daily Briefing. He was interviewed by Dave Rubin, and he was asked some of the most pressing questions. Take a listen. Thank you so much for joining the show. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll be notified every time I upload new content. Now back to the discussion.
But what do you make of how the administration has laid out the goals? You know, it seems like it happened so quickly and Khomeini was taken out so fast that at first people are like, well, what is this? Is this regime change? Now it seems Trump's given a couple press conferences, and Rubio particularly, where they're laying out the goals. What do you think are the effective real world goals that do you think we can accomplish all the goals they've laid out? Have they laid out everything we need to hear?
I think they've now, I wouldn't say that in the first 48 hours, but, obviously they had their hands full. But I think now they have laid out the objectives fairly clearly. Look, the first couple, I think that they've achieved those remarkably quickly. That would be, significant destruction of the missile stockpiles, launchers, and also the ability to resupply, to manufacture missiles going forward, right? The destruction of the Navy, such as it is, Iran's never been a blue water Navy strength out there. They've kind of relied on asymmetrical warfare. So the fast boats, the ability to disrupt commercial shipping, particularly in the Strait of Hormuz.
Yep.
The other issues, are much more complicated. The objective of they'll never have a nuclear weapon. The objective of they will never, foment terrorism through the support of their terror proxies that they've built up over all these years. Those things require, A, more time, and B, a kind of a fundamental shift in the regime itself. And so whether that happens is completely down to the Iranian people at this point. Right? I know that there's been these rumblings about, well, they haven't ruled out the idea of boots on the ground. I don't see a moment where anybody says, yeah, let's put boots on the ground in Iran. So I would be skeptical that would happen. But this comes down to the Iranian people and whether they see this as their moment and whether there's an opportunity to overcome what's left of the security apparatus, which is still significant.
What do you think it looks like when Trump says the people have to take over? Yeah. What do you think that actually looks like? Because I think what most people, and I respect this position, people are worried, hey, this is just going to turn into another Iraq, or we're going to kill Gaddafi and then Libya became a failed state. There'll be some version of that. Now, the Iranian people are very different than the Iranian regime, but what does it actually look like on the ground?
Yeah, I'm glad you raised Libya. You can't make a comparison there. Libya, is it's a tribal environment, right? Over 130 tribes spread across this massive land space. Never a sense of any sort of federal system in any way. And likewise, you can't take Venezuela and say, well, that's a template for Iran, right? Venezuela had a history of elections and a sense of democracy and what that meant, and you had a defined opposition. You don't have that necessarily in Iran. So there's going to have to be, as you pointed out, there's going to have to be defections. There's going to have to be individuals within the structure, the IRGC and elsewhere, the armed forces that say, okay, enough is enough, right? Maybe they're not fundamentalists, right? They're not members of the Assembly of Experts. They're not hardline clerics. And they've said, okay, that's it. Maybe they're hearing rumblings from their own family saying, you've got to do something, right? And so if you get those individuals with sufficient responsibility or credibility within the armed forces, within parts of the IRGC, there's parts of it that will never change, right? Because they're so entrenched and they've enriched themselves so much, they don't see an upside to turning. But if you can get enough of those individuals that do, then the people have a chance. But unarmed, population against an armed security apparatus that just finished slaughtering thousands of them, you've got to hope for some real internal change within that leadership structure for this to actually take effect. Otherwise, a likely scenario is you get a reshuffling of the deck chairs. Eventually, you do get a successor named, The RGC continues to hold. They have had their teeth removed for the most part in terms of their missile stockpiles and a lot of other capabilities that they had, but they're still in charge. And the people look around and go, now what? Right. And so once again, you have this failed opportunity for the people to realize a better future.
What would you say to the sort of hyper libertarian people on the right? I would put Tucker, although frankly, personally, I think his intentions are a little more nefarious at this point, but the hyper isolationist America should do nothing outside of its borders and not be involved in the world. What would you say to people who are taking that position right now?
Yeah, I mean, I understand. That'd be a wonderful world to live in. I'd love to live in a world like that where you could just draw the curtains and all you have to do is worry about your own nation. But what I would say is that's not the world that we live in, right? And so God bless you if that's how you think. That's terrific. But I think it's all based on your own personal experiences too. I mean, what do the kids say nowadays? Your lived experience. And I've spent most of mine overseas in some very hostile and challenging environments. And I've seen that it's not a community of nations out there. And I've also seen how interconnected everything is, right? Nothing happens in a bubble that doesn't impact your own country, your own citizens. So I get it. I understand why people think that seems like an attractive idea. And, I'd love that to be the case for the world, because that would mean that we do, in a sense, have a community of nations. And we could all just kind of focus on ourselves and everything else would tick along nicely. But I don't believe that's the world we live in.
Right. Yeah, I'm totally with you.
So there you have it. Spoken from someone who was present, who presented intelligent briefings to the president, an expert. And I have the full interview in the description box below. But after the break, I have a message to you, we the people. What is our role in all of this? Where do we really stand in all of this? Stay tuned. We're almost finished. You're listening to the Janelle King Show right here on Extra 106.3. We'll be right back. Don't leave the table.
Hello, everyone. My name is Suzanne Guy, and this is the Church's Moment. There is an incredible opportunity to start a distinct pro-life ministry at your church. We started one at our church about 5 years ago, and the fruit has been tangibly beautiful. We do monthly meetings that educate and equip the body of believers on sanctity of human life issues from womb to tomb by bringing in and featuring different pro-life leaders from all over Georgia, as well as featuring different ministries like post-abortion healing ministries or foster care ministries. There are so many great community partners out there. And then the second part of this pro-life ministry is having a care team. This is an opportunity to show moms in crisis, moms in unplanned, unwanted, or crisis pregnancies, that the church is the place to run to, that the church is a safe haven and a place to go for tangible help, real hope, true compassion, friendship, and discipleship, and yes, an opportunity to share the gospel in both word and deed. Brothers and sisters in Christ, will you consider starting a distinct pro-life ministry at your church? It's so easy. Please contact me today to find out how simple this is. You can contact me at my email, proverbs318@att.net. This is the Church's Moment.
Welcome back. Welcome back to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King, and this is Extra 106.3, and this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today's table topic, Iran. So if you've been watching the news, then you know that the world has shifted. You know that one of the most significant escalations have already taken place since 1979. We are witnessing a desperate regime who's now lashing out based on the U.S. and Israeli strikes. But while the left and even some isolationist Christians blame America for manufacturing wars, the facts tell a different story. And we are to be armed when we go into our kitchen table debate with facts and truth by tracing the bloodline of this conflict. From our betrayal in 1979 to the Marine barrack bombings, to the EFP attacks in Iraq, to the disastrous cash pallets that was sent over there by Obama during his time. This is not just a geopolitical nuisance. It's about 40 years of war against a theocracy that hates our existence. And today, we're going to stop apologizing and we're fighting back. In the last segment, you heard from the CIA operative Mike Baker on why isolationism is a death sentence in the face of such evil, because it's impossible to display. Of course, we all would love to run and hide in our own little country and only take care of us and don't think of anybody else or those who are trying to attack us. But that's an ignorant standpoint. Because unfortunately, there are countries that want to attack us. There are countries that hate us. There are countries that don't think that we should exist. And there are countries who want our resources. They want to cut the head off and rule the people by putting us all under submission. I can tell you, America is not ready. We are not ready for the war to come to us. We have young people who can't ride bikes. We have young people who don't even understand what's going on. We're too comfortable over here. We're not ready to go fight. We wouldn't know how to fend for ourselves. The moment grocery stores empty, half of us are dying. We're weak. So unfortunately, when you have a weak society of comfortable people who complain from the comfort of their home and their heat, you force the government to have to take the fight to the other people's land. Because God forbid if it came on ours. We're weak. We've got to stop this. So that brings me to our final point today. The duty of the people. Your duty. Because we are living in an age of information warfare. The propaganda is thick. We're seeing videos that are being taken out of context, deep fakes that are appearing to be real. You will hear quote unquote experts telling you that defending our interests is imperialism. Don't be swayed by that. Do not let them demoralize you. There was a famous speech by Teddy Roosevelt that I think about every time the world gets dark. He spoke of the man in the arena. He said, it's not the critic who counts. It's not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust, sweat, and blood. Right now, there are men and women in the arena. There are American sailors in the Red Sea. There are pilots in the skies over the Gulf. And there are Iranian patriots in the streets of Tehran, risking execution for the chance at freedom and personal liberty. These are men and women, particularly on the American side, who raised their hand to serve this country. And shout out to our veterans, shout out to my husband, to my son, who signed their name on a dotted line to give their life for this country. Because if we don't defend our own country, no one else will. So I don't see our military men as a protected class that we have to say, oh no, let's not send them into war. They signed up to go to war because they understood that war is a part of peace, unfortunately. So don't be a spectator. Don't be the critic who sits in the cheap seats, all safe and sound, complaining about the messiness of war and the messiness of all of this and blaming Trump, all while enjoying the freedom that the fight provides. War is terrible. It is ugly. And no sane person wants war. We all are anti-war. But we must understand a hard truth that history has taught us over and over again. And that's that sometimes war is necessary for peace. You cannot have peace with a regime whose slogan is death to America. And you cannot have peace talks with a government that relies on perpetual violence to exist. You've got to get in the arena. You have to fight for your country. Not with a rifle, but with your voice. With your conviction, with your support, with your vote, demand that our country be protected. Demand that we be efficient, productive, and unapologetic in our defense of liberty. If America falls, guys, the world falls. It is a lot. There is a weight that America carries. It's the weight of success. It's the weight of being the fat king. It's the weight of understanding that the whole entire world is looking to us. That we are the ones that have to stand in the gap. We have to be the adult. And it's hard. And believe it, if President Trump wanted to go to war with Iran, we would have obliterated them a long time ago. He is slowly making steps, but he's doing it through strength. And it's uncomfortable. I get it. But please understand, Iran could have stopped this mess a long time ago. But they chose not to. Every time we say stop making bombs, stop trying to get nuclear weapons, China, stop assisting them. How do you think Iran got a hypersonic missile? Well, China. We've got to look at this with clear eyes. Take the scales off of your eyes and see it for what it is. We've been comfortable too long. And I get it. It hurts. It's hard. It's uncomfortable. But it's where we are. We shouldn't apologize for fighting for the light. We must pray for the Iranian people as they take their shot at overthrowing their tyrannical government. We should be proud that when the darkness tries to take over, we were the ones who stood up and said, "Not on my watch." That should be a moment of gratitude, strength, and proud. And to my fellow brothers and sisters in Christ, pray, pray, pray. Strengthen yourself with the word. Put on the full armor. Prepare yourself, because we don't know where this is going to go. But we know that God will protect his own people. Until next time, stay unafraid, stay unapologetic, and never stop seeking the truth.
The poorest way to face life is to face it with a sneer. There are many men who feel a kind of twisted pride and cynicism. There are many who confine themselves to criticism of the way others do what they themselves dare not even attempt. There is no more unhealthy being, no man less worthy of respect than he who either really holds or feigns to hold an attitude of sneering disbelief toward all that is great and lofty, whether an achievement or in that noble effort which, even if it fails, comes to second achievement. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again. Because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds? Who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat.